In Tooele, Utah, Michael, Lincoln, and T-Bag drive through the subdivision, passing from house to house. The Fox River fugitives are currently attempting to locate the old Carl Cozing Ranch, also known as the Double K Ranch, which has now been turned into a subdivision. Agitated by the turn of events, Michael lashes out on T-Bag, who has been constantly distracting him by talking too much. He orders T-Bag to recall the map he previously ate, warning him that heat is useless if he fails to tell them its exact location. Michael thinks that the subdivision has been hastily done and that the $5 million is still buried somewhere. With their combined efforts, the two eventually figure out that Westmoreland's money is located under a particular house surrounded by trees. As Michael points at the garage of the house, a woman comes out to the yard. The person who owns the house is later identified as an appealing woman named Jeanette Owens. To make their job easier and quicker, T-Bag suggests killing Jeanette, but Michael dismisses him. Lincoln cuts their conversation and claims that he has an idea. They retreat to a deserted area and let Tweener out of the trunk. Once he's out, Tweener asks Michael for his cut on the money. Michael reminds him of his previous betrayal and says that he has to prove that he can be trusted first. He sends Tweener on an errand to gas up their car and get back to the equipment shop to gather all the supplies they need. Before he drives away, Tweener replies that they can trust him this time. Meanwhile, Sucre, who is currently heartbroken from failing to stop Maricruz and Hector's wedding, drives a motorbike on his way to Tooele, Utah. Later on, he unexpectedly finds C-Note walking on the sidewalk. C-Note shows Sucre the coordinates that will lead to the money and encourages him to collaborate. The two briefly share sentiments on their failed meeting with their loved ones and decide to work together to get Westmoreland's money instead. Elsewhere, Haywire is seen riding his stolen bike all the way to a burger joint in Wisconsin. Having starved for a few days, he breaks inside the diner through the small drive-through window and ransacks the food. For a while, he goes undetected while soaking himself with the beverages. Just then, a couple who manages the burger joint spots Haywire looking at them. Haywire escapes the burger joint as soon as he gets discovered and wanders alone in the city until he finds a quiet house. He breaks into the house and finds an elderly woman inside. The elderly woman, who is revealed to be blind, senses Haywire's presence but mistakes him for her missing son Billy. Haywire pretends to be Billy and is able to get a fresh set of clothes. Later, the elderly woman makes him a sandwich. While Haywire eats, the blind woman expresses her relief for his return. Haywire later asks about the painting displayed on her wall, seemingly captivated by it. The blind woman says that it is a painting of Holland, the place where she grew up. Knowing that her son knows about the painting, the blind woman then grows suspicious of Haywire. As Haywire stares at the painting, she subtly strokes his hand, realizing that the hand is not her son's. While Haywire walks to the kitchen, the blind woman urgently calls the police. Just then, Haywire emerges while carrying a knife and slowly walks towards her direction. Some time later, two police officers arrive at the blind woman's house. They find her alive, but alone because Haywire already left. Later, the police discover that the Holland painting has been cut out of its frame, implying that Haywire took it with him before leaving the house. Around the same time, Agent Mahone arrives in a federal building in Salt Lake, Utah. He communicates with Lyle Sands, another agent stationed in Utah who he will work with on the case of the Fox River 8. Mahone requests for additional files on the D.B. Cooper case, telling Sands that the inmates are in the town to get D.B. Cooper's money. While researching on D.B. Cooper, Mahone receives a call from the field office in Chicago, reporting that Haywire has been spotted. Mahone, on the other hand, decides to focus on the D.B. Cooper case and permits the local authorities to handle Haywire. He later identifies a man named Harold Jenkins, the said person who met D.B. Cooper on the day of the hijacking. For a while, Sands seemingly doubts that the Fox River fugitives really know where the money is. Mahone then explains that Charles Westmoreland, the real D.B. Cooper, has been locked up with them before. Convinced, Sands lets Mahone talk to Harold Jenkins. Mahone finds Jenkins in an automobile repair shop and asks for information on D.B. Cooper. Jenkins states that he was a gas station attendant in Utah back then, and he only saw D.B. Cooper when the man was filling up his gas tank. With the help of Jenkins, Mahone is able to narrow down his search to a few towns in Utah. Back in Chicago, Sarah receives another handwritten envelope with an origami swan. When she checks one of its wings, she finds a different series of numbers. She tries dialing the number, but it gets disconnected. Sarah goes to check back on the first origami swan she received and stares at the two cluelessly. In Washington, D.C., Agent Kellerman is inside the Capitol building as he briefs about the series of numbers he discovered in Sarah's apartment. He stops and later insists that he has been looking forward to reporting to President Caroline Reynolds. However, Agent Kim interrupts Kellerman, stating that Reynolds is now too busy to entertain him after being sworn in as president. Kellerman reminds him that he has been working for her for 15 years and that she became president through his assistance. Before their briefing ends, Agent Kim taunts Kellerman, saying that he will no longer report to President Reynolds directly. Governor Frank, who was also in the building at the same time, sees Kellerman leaving from the Secret Service office. Heavily concerned, Frank immediately calls Sarah while she is in the middle of shopping for groceries. He informs Sarah that he will be cutting his trip short in Washington, D.C. short, and that he is on his way back to Chicago. Governor Frank warns Sarah to stay away from Kellerman, who she knows is his alias Lance. Frank continues, saying that Lance is not the person she thinks he is. Moreover, Frank tells Sarah that she was right about Lincoln's case files. Just then, Kellerman appears behind Sarah, prompting her to abruptly hang up the call with her father. Tweener sneaks back into the equipment store to gather the supplies ordered by Michael. He goes back to check the local owner of the store and finds him still bound and gagged in the storage room. Tweener instructs the local store owner to be quiet before locking the room again, while Tweener retrieves the rest of the necessary supplies. Another man suddenly unlocks the door and enters the store. Growing suspicious, the man starts calling the town sheriff. Just before the man discovers him, Tweener hits him with a shovel, knocking him unconscious. After a while, Agent Mahone is right outside the equipment store along with a police officer after receiving a missing person call. While the police officer thinks that the incident is not too urgent to be visited by the FBI, Mahone persists in investigating the place. He breaks into the store and finds the two local employees bound and gagged inside the storage room. As soon as they are freed, the local owner urgently tells Mahone that the escaped convicts are in the town. Near Jeanette's house, Lincoln tampers with the power source. Tweener also returns with the supplies and informs the others about his previous encounter with the other man in the equipment store. Thus, they hurry to dig the money in Jeanette's garage. Michael, Lincoln, T-Bag, and Tweener pose as maintenance workers from an electric company. Michael knocks on Jeanette's doorstep and pretends that they are conducting repairs. He convinces Jeanette to dig underneath the garage, claiming that the defective cable is located there. Right before they start digging, C-Note and Sucre arrive at the garage. Michael instructs C-Note and Sucre to step out of the house because they might get discovered, but the two of them insist on digging to get their share of the money as well. Just then, Jeanette returns to the garage and finds C-Note and Sucre. Michael barely relieves her suspicion, and T-Bag volunteers to distract Jeanette. As the rest of the Fox River fugitives begin digging, T-Bag keeps Jeanette preoccupied by having a drink with her. T-Bag casually flirts with Jeanette, and for a while, talks about each of their exes. Time passes and two of them are seemingly having a good time, until Jeanette tells T-Bag to fetch Lincoln for her. He then realizes that all the while, Jeanette prefers Lincoln over him. Feeling like he was played, T-Bag gives Jeanette a quiet, murderous look. Back in the garage, Michael tells Sucre about a particular website with a message board. Since they are all on the run, Michael encourages Sucre, along with the other fugitives, that they can all use the website to communicate with each other. Soon later, Lincoln discovers the Silos Foundation. From there, they take turns digging further trying to find the money. Michael tells everyone that once they retrieve all the money, they will have to leave Utah in an instant. Just then, Tweener realizes that he forgot to gas up their car, admitting it to everyone. Dismayed, Michael orders him to go out to the gas station immediately. While he fills up the gas, an employee immediately recognizes him and calls the police. As he talks to the employee, Tweener realizes that he is being stalled. Tweener rushes away from the gas station to escape from the approaching police vehicle, but to no avail. Agent Mahone, who is just around the area inspecting the equipment store, manages to corner him on a fence. While the digging in Jeanette's garage goes on, C-Note suggests that T-Bag should join them so they can dig faster. Thus, Michael goes to the living room to check on Jeanette and T-Bag. To his surprise, the two are nowhere to be found. Seeing only shards of ice scattered on the table and floor, Michael rushes upstairs, only to find Jeanette in her room, dollying up. Later on, Jeanette orders Michael to stop what they are doing in the garage and tells them to leave already. Just then, Sucre discovers a police officer approaching the house. Michael and T-Bag also see the police officer from the window upstairs, causing them to panic. In a desperate move, T-Bag takes Jeanette hostage and aims a pointed hammer on her throat. He reminds Michael that she is their only way out, leaving Michael blank.